Welcome to another video on sustainability. In this video, we will see how corporates are adopting sustainability practices in order to help the world meet net zero targets. I will try to address this topic using this article which was published in the Economic Times on 5th January 2024. The article says to achieve net zero, companies must learn climate science. Alongside consumer research, managers should know how ecology and society interact. So what this article is saying that all the managers generally focus on consumer research, finance, operations, etc. But now they should also understand how the people and their environment interact with each other. So let's get going. Jaideep Prabhu is a professor of marketing at the Judge Business School, Cambridge University. Speaking to Srijana Mitra Das, he discusses why meaningful ESG stands for Environment, Social Governance, requires significant changes in companies. So this is in the form of question and answers. However, we'll try to understand the key points being made. So what does the term sustainable marketing mean? Now, companies are increasingly being held to account globally not only for their financial performance and market share, but their environmental and social impacts, grouped under ESG. ESG, this is like I said, E is for environmental and social, S is for social, G is for governance, but basically what this is saying is that companies are being held accountable not only for their financial performance and market share, but also how they are managing the environmental and social impacts. So their environmental and social impacts. Now there are growing concerns around businesses with a trajectory of maximizing their financial performance at the cost of social and environmental factors. That is becoming less acceptable and more traceable. So earlier, only the financial performance of an organization was being looked upon. Now, in the past, there was some deniability over whether water or air or ecosystems were getting polluted by commercial operations. Without adequate measurements, businesses could pass the buck. But today, there is much greater traceability. So one thing that has happened is that earlier nobody was tracing that where is the environmental impact coming from. But now there are enough measurements which have been created so that it can be traced back to the organizations and it can be put on them. So the traceability has increased, the measurements have increased. Many groups are scrutinizing such impacts and pressurizing companies to improve their performance. These include civil society clusters, customers, employees who prefer companies with a good reputation in this space, and regulators. Importantly, the financial community is also among these groups because people investing in funds are concerned about the environmental impacts of companies they back. So as I have mentioned in multiple videos of mine, the consumers have become very conscious about the products that they are buying and whether the companies whose products they are buying are following environmental sustainability practices or not. Similarly, the employees have also become very conscious. They want to work for organizations who are environmentally conscious. Now, a whole group of factors is thus encouraging businesses to focus on bettering their social and environmental scores. That also affects marketing. Managers now need to consider the kind of customers they are working with, their ESG aspirations, possible innovations, etc. So the question which was asked was, what is sustainable marketing? So basically what is being said is the managers now need to consider the kind of customers they are working with. So their ESG aspirations, what are the customers looking for? Which type of companies are they going to prefer when they are buying products? Possible innovations, etc. In the context of reducing negative environmental impacts or making positive contributions. This is no trivial change. It is a massive challenge which requires new thought. So basically what they're saying is that the marketing has to change to focus on the ESG aspirations of the consumers, and sustainability has also become an important part of marketing. Now let's look at the next thing. The United Nations emphasizes circularity. Now we have seen this earlier, circular economy as a commercial strategy. How are companies working with this? The attempt to adopt circularity began in 2009 when Unilever launched its Sustainable Living Plan. The objective was to double the sales but halve their environmental footprint in 10 years. This drove huge systemic changes across the entire supply chain. Now you're seeing how the goal or the target which has been set up by the leadership of Unilever to reduce their environmental footprint but double their sales has had on the entire supply chain, because entire thing has to change. A similar ambition can be seen in Tarkett, a French company which makes flooring solutions for office buildings, sports arenas, etc. As analyzed in our book Frugal Innovation, they adopted a 10-year plan to become fully circular enterprise. The idea was that everything that went into their products and services would be reduced, reused, or recycled. So this is a part of the 6 R's of sustainability. So reduce the items that are being used in your product, reuse the items as much as possible, and recycle the products. This is challenging as it involves shifting a business model from being transactional or just selling goods to consumers who eventually discard these to adopting a new service model. Here, a contract is signed with a company or building group with Tarkett retaining control over certain assets. After a stipulated time, it can reuse or recycle these. So basically what this is saying is that they have created a contract with a company or building group where certain assets, like what they are building, they still have control over those assets. So control over those assets, they are retaining control over those assets. And after some time, when the material has become old, they take it, they reuse it or recycle these materials. So that way, they are not just producing material and leaving it to be discarded into a waste. It is a circular economy. That is, the product which is at the end of its life is again being taken by them for either reuse or recycling. So that's what this organization is doing. Now let's look at IKEA. So this was Target. Now let's look at IKEA. IKEA's products used to routinely end up in landfills too. Now IKEA is a large manufacturer of furniture. The company decided to tackle this both for sustainability and pragmatism, in that their own access to crucial materials has to be secured. If global reserves of timber are depleted, going by their earlier business model, they would face scarcity of a key resource. Now IKEA is in the business of manufacturing furniture. So what they are saying is that it uses timber to manufacture their products. Now if they go by their earlier model where they sell the furniture and that goes into landfills, then there will be a point where the key resource, that is timber, would be short of supply and they will not be able to make their products. So IKEA has been building a circular business model with steps like leasing furniture. So that means they lease the furniture so people can use it and return it after a certain time when the lease ends. Repurchasing or getting customers to bring furniture back to stores which the company can refurbish, upcycle or resell. So they are encouraging the customers to bring back the furniture to the stores. Now this was never heard of. Earlier we used to have cars which were being refurbished or resold. Now furniture is also being refurbished and resold. This means major changes in the supply chain, operations and capabilities. It also requires bringing customers on board. They need to be willing to participate. Of course, the customers have to be willing to participate. We see similar attempts being made by many textile firms. So we saw about Unilever, which is into consumer products. Then we saw about Trackit, which is into flooring. Then we saw about IKEA, which is into furniture manufacturing. And now let's look at textile firms. So clothing is a huge contributor to the environmental crisis, adding to ecosystem pollution, resource depletion and wastage in landfills. Circular business models could help textile firms reduce their impacts, but a challenge is bringing customers on board and making them to engage with notions like sharing or repairing outfits, etc. So sharing or repairing outfits. That requires behavioral changes. So this is about the textile industry where they want to, instead of throwing old outfits into waste, they are encouraging to repair the outfits or share the outfits, that is giving it to other people who find it useful and can continue the use. Now let's look at the food sector. In the food sector, beverage suppliers are attempting to alter their packaging materials from glass to paper, Tetra Pak, etc., which have lighter footprints. So earlier beverages were sold in glass bottles. Now they are changing it to paper or Tetra Pak, which have a lighter footprint. All of this involves changing both business operations and consumer norms, which often means navigating deep-seated habits. So of course the habits of the consumers have to change, habits of the organizations have to change to adopt these sustainability practices. Now let's look at the next point. What skills do companies need in order to develop ESG innovativeness? Now, of course, organizations are undergoing this shift, which is impacting their entire supply chain and operations. So they need to change some of the skills that they possess today. So let's talk about what are the different skills. First, an enterprise must have thorough knowledge about ESG. So, everybody in the organization should know what is meant by ESG. This is beyond business as usual, which a regular MBA or an understanding of finance or accounting can aid. A company must learn at least the basics of climate science now. And it must start thinking about other disciplines too, including the social dimensions of the ecological crisis. There is often a tension between environmental and social factors. Consider a mine being closed for ecological reasons, but this transition must be equitable for the communities employed there. Companies must develop the ability to not just research consumers but start thinking holistically about the environment. What comprises it and how to manage it better. Businesses will also need to engage with behavioral science, from nudges to consumers to complex system change. So behavioral science also needs to be understood. This demands a lot from top management. They cannot be trained in commercial subjects only. As net zero and other key global targets approach, managers will need to develop a broader understanding of environmental science, technological possibilities, and social systems. So basically, companies should learn about the climate science. They should understand behavioral science to understand their consumers, and they should have a broader understanding of environmental science, technological possibilities, and social systems.